right, welcome everybody to week 2 of STIR Crazy Month. My name is Mike Bayer. I'm the CEO and co-founder here at the Vacation Rental Formula Business School, and we have a wonderful panel joining us today as we discuss trust in the short-term rental industry. And this is very important, especially the broad aspect of your business. But more importantly, today is Book Direct Day, where the industry celebrates and encourages more companies to encourage their guests to book direct. And how we go about that. The number one thing to a successful book direct strategy is building trust and building relationships with your guests. So this is a perfect timing. You would think we have planned it this way, which maybe we did. So first of all, before we get going, we are recording this session. So if you have to drop off, you will have access to the recordings. And please, when those recordings become available, share them out, because I think a lot of people in the industry need to hear about this topic and how important it is. We will get into introducing everybody in just a second. I'm going to put a quick poll up here, which is just a quick introductory, just to find out who is listening today and just to let us know what kind of business you have. And that kind of helps us to get an idea of who we're tailoring the conversation to today. So I'm actually going to hand this over now to Heather Bayer, my co-founder and business partner, and my mum, as she leads us today as we talk about trust in the short-term rental space.
Thanks, Mike. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Heather Bayer. I am the host of the Vacation Rental Success podcast. That has been going for, 10 years now. We're up to about 540 episodes and around about 1.5 million downloads now, which we're very proud of. I had this idea about the STIR Crazy Month back in December when I saw a post by Justin Ford about going to conferences and only seeing material on the top attended sessions at conferences tended to be the stuff that's, and I can't remember what he called them, I'd say the sexy topics like marketing and Instagram and making money in this business. That's the ones that had the sellout audiences. And the ones that were on sustainability and insurance and trust and safety had lots and lots of empty seats. And this really resonated with me because I'm seeing the industry moving in a way that I don't like it. And I wanted to bring all these pillars, what we believe are the pillars of the business, to the forefront and to make it public and get more people listening. So without further ado, let's introduce this panel, because we're talking about trust this week. It just happens, as Mike said, Book Direct Day today, a very auspicious day to be doing this. First of all, I'd like to introduce Neely Khan from iPrac. I've known Neely for a number of years. She's the most amazing content creator and is now the managing director of iPrac. So can you just give us a little introduction to yourself, Neely?
Thank you, Heather. Happy Book Direct Day and 1.5 million downloads. That's super impressive. Can I just say that's amazing? I'm Neely Khan. I stepped into the short-term rental industry around 5 or 6 years ago as a professional writer, as a content writer. I've always worked in hospitality. I've always written professionally. So when I stepped into the industry, actually, I've worked with lots of short-term rental brands and hosts, helping them create trust, actually, ironically, through their content marketing, through their branding. And that is when I met Chris Morn, the CEO and the founder of iPrac, also around 5 or 6 years ago, and started working with iPrac and quickly became iPrac's senior research journalist. And it is impossible to work with Chris Morn and not be inspired by everything he talks about. So off the back of numerous reports and campaigns and initiatives that we worked on together, Chris asked me to step in as the managing director around 6 or 7 months ago, because he's incredibly busy with his own businesses. He needed somebody else to take the lead. With iPrac, I know the brand very well. I've worked with iPrac for a very long time, and it is such a privilege to be able to directly work with our members now and help them leverage iPrac accreditation as a direct bookings tool, first and foremost, before anything else.
That's great. Thank you so much, Neely. And just to let everybody know that I've interviewed Chris, and his podcast episode was released this morning. So Mike will put a link into the chat for that podcast. Let's go to Harshad Harania from Mari Villas. How great to have you with us. I know you're an IPRAC certified prop company, and I'm going to be sharing a website a bit later on, so people can see how you have built trust into your website. But Harshad, can you give us a quick introduction?
Yeah, thank you, Heather. So, Murray Villa, we were travel agents in London, and we used to send people to Catalonia. And the reason we came to be in Catalonia was Keith, our estate agent, went to Catalonia, or we sent him to Catalonia, came back and said, Harshad, have you been? I said, no. He said, you should go down. So we took a holiday there for a week, stayed at a place not very far from where we built our place, and we're just talking about land and things like that. Got the opportunity to look at some land on a Thursday. By Saturday, we'd put a bid in for the land. We designed it ourselves, me and Dina, and we built it. And that's where Amari Villa came about. So we built it to our specifications. So we're now literally 20 years ahead in 2024. And it has been quite a journey in terms of planning everything like that. Really good place. And being a travel agent actually enabled me to do that. So we're actually reaping the benefits of that, Heather, now. So that's a short story on Amari Villa.
Okay. Thank you. And over to Dave Goodfellow from No Key Stays, also an IPRAC certified company. How did you get to where you are today, Dave?
Yeah, so look, I'm a property investor at heart, really. Started into property about 13 years ago. Started buying properties, doing them up and then flipping them on and making a few quid out of that. And about 5 years ago, I got into the world of serviced accommodation, short-term rentals, mid-term rentals. And I've built a little business off the back of that. We develop, we rent stuff, we manage stuff for other people and all in between. Big jump going from kind of property investment to hosting and dealing with guests in your properties rather than tenants. Big mindset change for me, but I've never really looked back, to be honest, from where I was back then, just doing tenancies to now being a host.
This is interesting. First of all, this is great. For those of you who are watching, this is the Brit panel. Dave, I want to start with you, in fact, because we hear a lot about investors, people coming into the industry, and it all seems to be a money-making thing, and very little attention is paid to these pillars of the industry. The number one being trust. So you're a little bit of an outlier in amongst all this bevy of investors.
That's exciting, isn't it?
The
That I'm
bottom
the
line
outlier.
is thinking. So why do you believe trust is such a critical factor in this? And why have you invested in developing trust as the cornerstone of your business?
So I think, look, just to go back on what you said first about people jumping into the industry, getting into this, and lots of people doing it now for purely for tax reasons and to put more money in their back pocket, basically. And people getting into it for the wrong reasons, not really understanding what they're getting into and understanding the work that goes into running a short-term rental business. And then, of course, creating these businesses, not really knowing how to do it, and then making a mess of it and making a real horror story for the rest of us when you're speaking to people, like when they talk about things like Airbnb. Oh, you don't do Airbnb, do you? That's not a great word. I think, why do we believe that trust is so critical in this industry? Firstly, it's the foundation of consumer confidence, right? So when you're looking at trust, you're encouraging guests to book with peace of mind. Yeah. When their expectations for safety, for quality, and the service has got to be met at the same time. So trust being a critical factor is you've got to have all those things in place in these businesses. And if you haven't got that element of trust with the customer, then they're not going to come back and buy with you again, or they just won't buy with you in the first place, which then you haven't got a business. So you've got to create those pillars of trust that you talk about in the background. You've got to have confidence. You've got to put across what you do and communicate that in a way that's sensible and easy to understand for the end user. And that's like the critical path, right? If you can't provide trust, you can't provide confidence, you can't provide a communicating that to your customer, then they're not going to trust you, they're not going to buy from you, and you haven't got a business.
I think that's the main point. They're not going to buy from you if they don't trust you. Neely, trust is your business. That's what you do. Why? Let's have the why of this all. Chris is telling us about it in the podcast this week. Let's hear it from really the core of your business. What's your why?
What's our why in terms of why trust, or what's our why?
Why trust? Why have you dedicated your entire business to one thing, to trust?
Yeah. So as Dave has alluded to as well, I think we are all in agreement of the fact, we all innately know that trust is at the core, at the pinnacle of every single decision we make in life. Anything we do, the human brain is designed to seek out red flags before making a decision. That is something that we cannot disagree with. That is the way we are biologically hardwired to behave. Before you buy a cup of coffee from a coffee shop brand you've never seen before, the first thing, you might do it subconsciously, but the first thing that your brain is going to ask you is, can I trust this place? Will the coffee taste good? And obviously, the bigger the investment from your side, so this is just a cup of coffee, but then if you think about something where the investment of your time, of your money, of your sanity, of your emotional well-being is at stake, like staying at a stranger's property to spend the night, an experience that actually leaves you quite vulnerable and exposed, then of course the matter of trust is going to come into play first and foremost. And I think an uncomfortable truth that very much exists in our industry, and that people for some reason don't like to speak about as much, is that the reason why guests continue to book with OTAs like Airbnb, like Booking.com, despite the fact that we complain about them so much, despite the fact that the help centers are faceless, they're not particularly reassuring when we need them to be, is because they still trust them, because they're familiar with them. And the reason why there is a hesitancy when we're asking people to book direct, what we're asking them to do is to abandon the OTAs that they're very much used to, or the other hotel alternatives, and trust us instead. We're making the presumption that people trust us without even having, and Chris talks about this a lot, we presume that people are going to trust us just because we think we're legitimate. But trust is something that forever has to be earned. And I think that is at the core of everything we speak about at iPrac. One, to never presume that your guests are going to trust you because they don't know you like they know Airbnb and Booking.com and all of the other bigger OTAs. And two, to then make an active, ongoing effort to earn that trust and not just assume that photos and blogs and reviews is going to do the job for you, or one message, or your iPrac logo at the bottom of your homepage where nobody's going to see, things like that. It's an ongoing effort. Trust needs to be earned.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did a post on LinkedIn this morning just about choosing a hairstylist and look at new hairstylist and looking at just a ton of websites that looked exactly the same old images of extensions and coloring and whatever. And then I came across a site, and right at the beginning it said, why should you trust us with the way you look when you step out of the door in the morning?
Yeah.
And they didn't have a trust page as such, but they had an about us page which actually talked about the owner of the salon and why she got into the business and why it was so important for her to have people go out and not look good on that day, but every day between that day and the next time they came. And I booked an appointment, went there because they asked me why I should trust them. And that was just that. It was interesting because I explored my process of getting that trust, of how they earn that trust. And none of the others were even remotely asking me to trust them.
Yeah, it's an acknowledgement. Yeah, they removed the uncertainty there for you, didn't they? Just by doing that.
They did. Yeah, exactly. And this is, you see so many websites where it's just a That's all same old. Here's my property, book it. And particularly when you're asking to book direct, as you just said. Harsh ad, your site is great. You've got, I'm just going to I'll just go here. This is, oh, I've got to share it, do I not?
Actually, Heather is just doing that. She's just getting that page set up. I'm just going to mention that I did share the poll that we put out at the beginning. So we have most of our attendees today are 1 to 4 people in their team. We have 3 people who are multi-property, 1 single property, and some others. But some of the questions that are coming out are really good. So we'll answer these. I'll just go run through them real quick. Will trust have a movement in the near future? Look for somebody's looking just for general tips. And what is the number one thing on a direct booking website that will give feeling on trust to potential guests? And I wanted to mention that because I know this is what Heather is going into right now.
Yeah, and then this sort of follows on what I was talking about from this hairstylist. So this is Harshad's site, and immediately at the top in the navigation is the word trust, which actually takes you to a trust page. Why embracing trust and confidence for an unforgettable stay, why you'll choose us every time, and the IPRAC certification. And then the other part of it is actually having, they've got the certificate. No, we're not talking here just about IPRAC, but we're talking about them. We'll move in to talk about more trust signals in a second. But Harshad, what was at the heart of this development? Why have you made trust a part of what we call above the fold on your homepage? What was important about this?
Brilliant question, Heather. So we thought about it ourselves. When we go somewhere, are we certain that the hard-earned money that we're going to spend on is going to be spent in a good way, that we're not being scammed, that we're going to get what is advertised? So what we want to do is, as discussed before, we want to remove that uncertainty. We want to be authentic. And what we try to do is not follow the herd. We want to actually talk to potential guests to become clients. So we'll talk to them on the phone. We'll answer their queries before they book. We've also included 360 view on our website so they can see each and everything. And we'll talk to them about what they can do on the island, what sort of sports facilities, or if they want to do fishing, things like that, anything that appeals to them, and make it like a home from home, really important. And Heather, it's had a significant impact due to that. People will actually call us. They start to actually converse with us. And it's become, we've had a number of customers who've been there 3-4 times, and they've become like family. So sometimes we'll have conversations, forget about Amari Villa, but just a conversation, and that's really good. That's really enlightening for both me and Dina. So I think by doing it that way, we're not like everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Dave, how do you show your trust? We're talking here about trust signals, and this is, I'll come back to Neely in a moment to make sure that we're covering all the different trust signals. But how are you portraying your focus on trust?
Okay, great question. So I think the best way to portray trust is for other people to tell you how good your business is, not you telling people how good your business is or how trustworthy your business is. So we always have all of our reviews on our websites. We always have our customers' reviews. And a massive part of our business is repeat business and referrals to other customers. So when customers come into our properties, I will speak to them. I'll get feedback from them. I'll then relay that to the team. And the amount of repeat business and referrals that we get just off the back of speaking to people, as well as putting stuff on the website and getting all those nice reviews on there, makes a massive difference. So for me, it's more about not telling a customer that you are trustworthy, but backing it up with them, other people shouting about you. And because we all know if somebody goes out and recommends you to somebody else, the likelihood is that they'll buy from you.
Yeah, Neely, what about other trust signals that are important, that are really important on a website?
Yeah, so I think it's a really good point. Speaking of third-party endorsements, like Dave has said, and I know we're a tiny bit biased because this is not just about IPRAC, like you said, but this is a reason why something like IPRAC accreditation works. If you have a established, credible verification platform that verifies you, then why wouldn't you take advantage of that? Because while reviews and recommendations are fantastic, and we definitely do encourage them, there is only verification is the only thing, a credible verification is the only thing that can guarantee that a property and a property host is in fact who they say they are. You are going to get what you are seeing on the website. So that would be third-party endorsements via accreditation from third-party accreditation platforms. And then moving on to things like your website, on trust signals on your website. We speak about trust pages a lot. Amari Villa's trust page is an excellent example. In our experience, we found that short-term rental hosts who have a dedicated trust page on their direct bookings websites, it increases their conversions by 63%. That is if they create a trust page with our advice in mind, because we will always advise on where the IPRAC logo should go. For example, on your homepage, on every page of your website, top left where the reader's eyes naturally land. For the trust page, we like to suggest ideas and templates. Again, the logo would go on the top right. The message at the very top above the fold of that trust page will be something along the lines of not "we are certified," because that doesn't really necessarily mean much to guests, but you can 100% trust us because, and I know this contradicts slightly what Dave has mentioned, but when it comes to website copy, you do need to tell people what you do and what to expect from you, because that is the purpose of your website. That is your shop window, so to speak. So a trust page, your accreditation, your logos in the right places of your website pages. Photography that is recent, that is dated, that you make a note of the fact that it's updated. You're not sharing photos from 10 years ago of your property. Verified reviews, content, if you're able to do that, blogs, and then contact details like a legitimate contact number. That's not a mobile phone number, because that tends to get people's minds thinking that is that a red flag. So a business number, your company registration number, your full address, everything and anything you have that showcases that you are in fact legitimate. And of course, as a writer, I have to say, your copy, your content, free from grammatical errors. Something doesn't necessarily need to sound like War and Peace or anything like that. Professional copy goes a long way. Please do invest in working with somebody who can help you with that, because that does make a difference.
I'd like to make a shout out to About Us pages. And I know that Chris and I, it was something that came up in our discussion, because when I'm looking at somewhere or any product or service, the first page I go to is About Us. And I want to know the story. And maybe that's me just being nosy, but I really want to know the story.
I love that.
Of why you're doing this business. Why should I trust? It's like this hairstylist that she had an About Us page that said, this is me, this is why I went into this business and why I've opened this salon, because I had this experience. And certainly for vacation rental sites, I love the sites that show the photographs of the founders, the people who founded this, and often with their families. And said, we started this because we wanted to bring our families on vacation and we couldn't find the right place that we knew was going to be clean, and that we knew, as you said, that we knew that the photographs were up to date, and I was going to find it as described. And that's my shout out for an About Us page, because that's what I trust. I like the idea of a trust page, also like the idea of an About Us page. Harshad, what's your view on that?
Really important because we're telling a story as to why Amari Villa, why you should make it a home from home. And it starts with us, Heather, right? Me and Dina really strongly believe in it, because not knocking Airbnb, booking.com, we have to put our own personality on it, Heather, and make sure that the potential guests identify with that. And it's so crucial. We're having good success with this, because they're buying not only us, but what we put into it.
That's a great way, a great segue into asking about how do you know that this, putting all this work into this, how do you know it's actually working for you? How do you know that your guests are coming to you because you're asking them to trust you and they feel you're sharing why they should trust you? What have you got any examples of how building trust with guests has positively impacted your business, maybe in terms of occupancy rate?
We have one family. Mike Scott is a surgeon. His brother, John Scott, he's on TV on Crafts and things like that. They came down to Catalonia the very first time, and we asked them for some suggestion as to how we can improve it for them. They gave us some suggestions on certain things. We put it into action. And the proof of the pudding, Heather, is they're back for the third time. They're going to come again. And they have a place in south of France. They have a place in Spain. Yet they're also coming to us. And they feel really special about coming to us. And I think we've had some good advertising from John on his show, on his craft show, where he's mentioned Amari Villa. Okay. We've had someone who's a general manager of an airport. He's been there a couple of times. So we've had repeat guests, and we want them to continuously come to Amari Villa and enjoy it with us. And I think that's a proof of the pudding that we're building trust. It's having an impact. And kudos to Neely and Chris, and also Heather, you banging on about STRs. It's really good with Mike and obviously Dave. So we're all in it together to improve the customer journey and also make sure they have a good time.
Dave, let's talk about Direct Book Day. So let's not forget that it is Book Direct Day. Yeah. And what advantages do you see in terms of fostering trust compared to relying solely on the OTAs?
It's bottom line, isn't it, for a start? So just picking up on the points from before, and it ties back into direct bookings and trust, is repeat business and keeping a customer for life is the life and soul of your business. If you delight your customers, they come to your properties, they stay with you, they have a good time, they will repeat book, and they will also tell other people as well. So referrals. So how we monitor that is through our direct booking percentage. And that's continuing to grow year on year. And that tells you whether you're in a good place or not for trust. I've got loads of stories where we've housed people and then they've passed our details on to their colleagues, and then we've ended up housing 10 different houses where we've taken bookings, all direct bookings, just because of a repeat business and referrals. That's absolutely massive. But I think what we're talking about today, there's a bit of everything. You've got to have a bit of everything, right? It's not just one thing that creates trust. It's having your IPRAC certification and having that, going through that process and having that clearly stated on your websites and anything else that you put out on social media or digitally, making sure that you've got a really good communication strategy with your clients, whether that's digitally or speaking to somebody on the phone or messaging them through whatever. It's got to be clear, it's got to be honest, and it's got to be, that will build the confidence. And confidence is a word I've used quite a lot today, but building confidence in a client and building confidence in your guests builds that trust. So yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question there, Heather.
That's great. I'm just going to throw this over to Mike. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, just before I segue into what I was going to say there, just to remind everybody, thanks so much for joining us. And just a reminder that today's session is sponsored by Proper Insurance. Proper Insurance is a great opportunity. If you were with Proper Insurance, that's something else you can put as part of your trust, is that you're properly insured. You are not only taking care of your business, but taking care of your guests as well. And Proper don't provide travel insurance, which they hope to be doing soon, but provide your guests with the opportunity for travel insurance. That's an opportunity for you to, again, build the trust with them that you're a legitimate business. But what I was going to segue into here was that, Dave, you mentioned earlier on that some people refer to Airbnb being a dirty word, and I feel the same way, but we can't remove them from the conversation. It is such an important part for so many people's businesses, and so many people rely 100% on Airbnb. So there's the
3%.
Yes, no, it's huge. It's a huge number. And I think that Airbnb, I still remind everybody, is a tool for you to use to market your property. It doesn't necessarily have to be your business. And I'm always encouraging everybody to begin to develop a book direct strategy. But there is that transitional strategy in terms of how you move them from Airbnb, or you use Airbnb, VRBObooking.com as the initial startup for your
Let them get your
business.
foot in the door, right?
Exactly. And then you can focus on the operational side of it. You can focus on making sure the hospitality, and you're getting your guests trust when they arrive at your property. And all of these things we talked about in terms of IPRAC registration and all those things you can include in your IPRAC certification certificate within your listings. But the thing is, once they get to your property, it can be something as simple as calling them or communicating with them, and whatever their preferred means is, to say, how's it going? Is there anything we can do?
Yeah,
Simply, we talked earlier about building a relationship. That's how you build that relationship, is by connecting with them.
Yeah.
I
So look,
think what it is, it's trust is not a once and done
no.
Yeah.
thing.
Sorry, Dave, go on.
So what you were saying there, it's music to my ears. So every customer that comes to an Oakie Stays property, the night after the first night stay, sorry, the morning after the first night stay, they get a phone call from our team, whether that be me doing some dipping back into the business and just getting a feel for the customer, or our team, customer service team. And we do what's called a mid-stay call. So we call the customer, make sure they're happy with their first night stay, make sure everything's exactly what we said it was going to be like. And then what we always do with that is we ask a couple of questions. If you're going to come back to us, book direct, here's our details. And if they're a contractor or a business stay and they're going to come back next week, that is our opportunity to make an Airbnb or a Booking.com customer our customer. Take them away from the platform and book them direct, which direct bookings are massive. It's been the best marketing strategy for us in our business, bar none.
We did that with our property management company, because I had a property management company for 20 years. And it wasn't until probably the last 5 or 6 years that we were using Breezeway for text messaging. And we took that on, and it was just such a game changer, because so many guests like to text. So we'd ask them, would you like a phone call, or shall we just text you? And so many of them said, oh, text, please. And we did exactly that, Dave. We set up a series of text messages so they were automated. So the morning they arrived, the day after they arrived, that message that says, hope everything's okay, please let us know if there's something missing or if there's a problem. And more often than not, we didn't hear back. But then that really, if there was an issue, we got those calls or we got the text back, and that started off the conversation.
And you know what? Sometimes as well, Heather, with that phone call or that text message, if a person's got an issue at the property, okay, that's your chance to put it right.
Yeah.
And I've seen it so many times. We've used this in my business and in other businesses, a thing called Net Promoter Score. I don't know if anybody's heard of that before, where people will give you a score out of 10. And when you make a mistake and you act on it very quickly by dealing with a text or dealing with it on a phone call, they'll give you a higher score than what they would have if you didn't, if they'd just gone and everything had been as they expected it to be. So again, it's another opportunity to get in there, build that trust, build your customer service, build your score, your review score, just by getting in there and making either a really simple phone call or a text message. It's massive.
Yeah,
I think
agree
a
with
lot
that.
of companies actually do this, but they don't see it as continuing that trust journey. Sorry, Harshad, I interrupted you.
No, sorry, I was just agreeing with you and Dave on that. What we found ourselves is they actually want us to talk to them in person on the next day, just a brief visit to make sure they're settled in. And it is good. When they have issues, we sorted them out. In fact, one of our clients knew about air conditioning. So something went wrong with air conditioning. And it was really good. He actually sorted the air conditioning out when he was there. It's a really good example of building confidence, building trust, and dealing with problems as well. Yeah, that's a really good one.
Neely, just comment on this, that trust is not a once and done thing. It's not just having a certificate on your site or just having a trust page. It's something that feeds in all the way through the guest journey.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much a mindset, leading with a trust first mindset. It involves, you've hit the nail on the head there. It's so much more than putting the right words on your website. These are trust signals. They certainly help. But if everything else you're doing around your, whether it's your sort of physical business activity or your marketing, if you haven't got the touch points in place, Dave's example of calling guests up after the first night, these are the things that you do alongside having the correct trust signals and trust marketing in place, which actually showcases why this is an ongoing process, because you build trust over time, don't you? You don't just do one thing for someone and then, you know, that will then make them trust you for the long term. So it's definitely, and actually your point about storytelling and telling the right stories too. And again, going back to what Dave said about it being a little bit of everything, I think knowing how to leverage certain tools in the right way and to communicate the benefits of them rather than communicating what they actually do. It's an ongoing process.
Later in this month, in STIR Crazy Month, we're going to be talking about regulations. And part of the whole issue of regulations is building trust with community and neighbours. Mike, come in on that one. You're on mute.
Thank you. Actually, Zoom's really good. It just told me I'm on mute too. So yeah, this is something that's near and dear to me right now. And I found this when I had my properties, that one of the things that very early on when we started with our very first property were our neighbors. They were friends with the previous owners, and we had a beach in front of our property, and the neighbors would just go and use the beach because that's what they knew. So when it was sold to us and we renovated the property and we started to rent, we immediately started having problems with our neighbors because we weren't familiar with the community. We weren't familiar. We hadn't taken the time to introduce ourselves. And very early on, there were some disagreements between guests and the neighbors, and we had some challenging experiences. And initially, my first thought was, oh, those neighbors, how dare they affect my business? And then I realized, hang on a minute, this is their community that I bought into. I'm now part of that community. And if I'm not taking the time as a business owner to connect with them, that's actually my fault, not theirs. So that's what I did. And we had a barbecue. We ended up having an annual barbecue, and we invited all the neighbors. We had all the kids around. We had a beach party, and we got to know our neighbors, and we gave them our telephone number. So if there were any issues or any problems, they became part of our business. And they started to build their trust in us as a business. We had somebody up the street who had a fire and they were displaced, and we found out about the fire, and we immediately contacted them to say, hey, we have a couple of weeks free in our property. You can stay in there, just pay for the utilities, get the insurance, and you guys can stay close and monitor. And that was a huge asset to us with our community, of us actually being an asset to the community and not a liability. And I think with the regulations that come in, these regulations come in because stakeholders like neighbors and community leaders, they are inundated with complaints and the issues surrounding short-term rentals. House prices and lack of housing is one issue, but I think a lot of complaints come from the way people operate their business and the guests who are staying at their properties. So I guess I'm just going to wrap up here, a bit of a monologue, but I think one of the most important things we can do is to build trust with our guests by, if you take on a new property, if you're a property manager, you take on a new property, you make sure you go and see the immediate neighbors and say, hey, this is who we are. Here's my business card. Here's a magnet to put on the fridge. You ever have a problem, you call us and we'll take care of it. Because that will go miles in the long term of helping to reduce the damaging impacts to the entire industry when you can connect with your community. Sorry, just very quickly, another topic is also to get in touch with your regulators, get in touch with your local councillor, your local member of parliament, or the people who can affect your business from a legislation point of view. Connect with them so they know who you are. So they're not only listening to one company. So they're not only just listening to Airbnb, they're going to listen to the other property managers who actually run a separate business to Airbnb in the neighborhood.
That's so important. So important. I did it here over in Chester, in one of our areas. Got the local MP in. They didn't really understand what we did. They didn't understand what the business was. And we've probably got a lot of regulation coming to the UK in the next couple of years, maybe. And for MPs to regulate this market, they need to understand what we do, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then you're absolutely right, is they seek out the easiest source of information. And the only source they're getting really is Airbnb because they have such a massive regulatory, what do you call that? Yeah, and they do connect. But of course, they are only representing themselves and their shareholders. And I do feel that they don't. It would be great if Airbnb were to rally the property management companies who use their service in the area, but it doesn't happen that way. But we do actually have to take the time to organize ourselves into advisory bodies for our tourist areas and be helpful, be a part of the
Well, you know what?
solution, not part of the problem.
When you reach out to your local MPs or members of Parliament or people who are setting these they come back to you. That's their job. That's what they do. So when I first reached out to Sam Dixon in Chester, I was quite surprised how quickly she came back and wanted to jump on a Zoom with us and talk about it. It was surprising, but they do. That's what they're there for.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it's such a hot topic,
right?
Yeah, I just wanted to just pop back to that topic of trust signals, and because we're talking about the wider community and trust, developing trust within the wider community. And Tyan Marsink talks about this all the time, is getting involved in the local community, joining your local chamber of commerce, doing something. I think Kerry Gibson's still with us as an attendee here. Kerry has very close relationships with all 3 or 4 of the local tourism boards, and you can, those are the trust signals you can use on a website, your memberships of these, whether it's BBB or it's a chamber or it's a tourism department. You can have those badges on your website, and those are just more trust signals that will help you along. Your comment on that, Neely?
I think, again, I think presenting them, showcasing them on your website, on your marketing material, presenting them in the correct way where people are actually going to see them. I think you can never do too much of that as long as you're doing it in the right way, because when you associate yourself with an already established and credible organization and you say that you are a member and you have that relationship with them, then of course that will only increase your reputation and of course your likelihood of being trusted. Again, it goes back to our comment about third-party endorsements and associating yourself with the right boards, members, people, organizations.
So Harshad, you've got a lot of experience with your property. What advice would you have for people who perhaps are watching this and thinking, oh, I don't have the time or resources to invest in any trust building initiatives. I'm just going to put out my website and expect people to come. How can they start doing this?
Heather, they have to take small steps, okay, to build that. When they take small steps, it's going to be easier to do. You can't just put it on your website and expect people to just accept it. We know there are tons of websites out there, okay, who are all competing. And how can they tell what's good from the bad, what's authentic at the end of the day? So what we try to do is try and engage with the customers in a different way. They can call us, they can find out we have got a Greek National Tourism Organization number. We want them to know that we're authentic. They can reach out and be in touch with us. I think that's a good way, little small steps to do that. It's not going to happen overnight and it's not going to happen by itself. So that's my advice. That's what we've done. It's taken us quite a bit of time to do that, Heather. Now it's actually paying dividends right now for us. There's
Dave,
no magic answer at all.
Dave, what are your thoughts?
Michael, sorry, didn't hear you then. So yeah, like you've just been saying there, small steps, but taking it from multiple angles as well. So trust doesn't just end with your guest. It's about what we were just saying there about the local community as well. Making sure that you are doing multiple things to gain trust in your business is paramount. Things like having your IPRAC certification, which has been massive for us, especially when you're getting inquiries coming in through your website and they've not gone through their trusted brands like booking.com, Airbnb, and they're new to you. You've popped up from somewhere, either on a website or somebody's referred you to them, and they need that element of kind of safety. They need that safety net in the background. And when you can show them that you've got certification, when you can show them that you've got that certification, and they can look you up and they can prove that, and they've got that confidence that booking with you, there's not going to be an issue, then that's a huge thing. But again, there's no silver bullet for trust. It's multiple things and multiple actions and lots of different things that you do within your business that builds up that confidence over a period of time.
It does. You're right. It's not one pill to solve the whole problem. It really is because not only do you have with your guests, you have the before the stay, the during the stay, and the follow-up as well. How do you maintain that communication that you still care about them? And that's that relationship building even after their stay, which is so important. We're just heading to the last 10 minutes. I'm just going to launch our closing poll here just to get a little bit of feedback from the attendees, just to let us know how you felt the session was, and also if you have any key takeaways that you wanted to share. And just a reminder again that just thanks to Proper Insurance for sponsoring STIR Crazy Month and this panel. And so I'm just going to throw it back to Heather here. I think her puppy was getting a little excited with what was going on outside.
Yeah, sorry about that. I couldn't hit the mute button fast enough.
No problem.
This is a 75-pound German Shepherd. She's got quite a loud voice. So yeah, I just wanted to just talk briefly about the fact that trust is it's not just trust. Trust incorporates things like safety. People are going to trust you more if you have a safe property and if you are respecting their need for safety and making that more prominent as well. They're going to trust you if you're becoming more sustainable and if you're showing evidence of your focus on sustainability as well. They're going to trust you if you have compliance with local regulations. They're not going to trust you the guest is not going to trust you if you say when you arrive, you've got to go down to the cafe down the street and ask for the key because there's nobody we're not really allowed to have rentals in this building. And they're not going to trust you if you're not insured. So you mentioned that. I think Dave mentioned that. You've got to have that in those insurances in place as well and tell people. So this is what STIR Crazy is: safety, sustainability, trust, insurance, and regulations. This is why we did this, but it's all trust is that overarching. Unfortunately, it had to come second because of the acronym, but trust is that overarching focus that encompasses everything else. Before we wrap up, let's have some final comments from you. And we're going to talk about IPRAC here because it's not necessary to have a certification, but certainly hearing from the panelists here, their certification is very important. Harshad, how has the IPRAC certification worked for you?
It's given potential guests a safety feeling, peace of mind, Heather. Okay, we haven't known them, however, this has been the first step for them to get in touch with us. Okay, we're somehow different. And I am on LinkedIn banging the drums when Neely, yourself, Chris Mogum actually put that out and make sure that we get the message across. And what we also want to do in Catalonia is get good business into Catalonia, not just for us, but for the other independents like us, to make sure that they can put that message across as well. And I think it's really good because then people will start to come to the independents and we will take small steps to overcome this Airbnb, Booking.com dominance. Yeah. And I think that's a good start.
Dave, over to you. Tell us about how IPRAC works for you and how the success you've had with it.
Yes, I've already alluded to, the certification, the trust, the safety, the legitimacy. But the main thing is that it helps you stand out in a crowd. Because if you look at 2 million properties on Airbnb across the world, how many of them are actually IPRAC registered? So when it comes to taking you off the platform and going down a different route, you absolutely stand out from the crowd, and people will come to you because they know you are verified in some way, form with the IPRAC certification. So for me, it's helped with revenue, it's helped with occupancy, it's helped with direct bookings more than anything else. And we all know that direct bookings are the life and soul of the party. If you're building a business on somebody else's foundations, then you haven't really got a business. So direct bookings is really, really important to make sure that you can pull people away from Airbnb and Booking.com, and iPrac helps you do that.
I love that you mentioned that sort of building your business on rented land. We've been banging that drum for so many years, and I'm glad to hear it. It's still sounding loudly. Neely, really over to you to talk a little bit about iPrac before we wrap up, and how people can get a certification.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Harshad and Dave for being valued iPrac members and speaking about iPrac, and not only becoming certified, but doing what we so very actively encourage our members to do, to actually leverage the accreditation as a direct bookings tool, as a trust marketing tool. Just as we say trust is not just one thing, it's actually encompasses a set of values. iPrac is not just a certification. iPrac is not just a verification platform. It is at the core of what we offer, absolutely. iPrac is, once you become iPrac verified through our meticulous process, it's what you get in return and what you do with it that helps you build a direct bookings business and a trustworthy business. Is the resource hub, the knowledge and the education that we share off the back of you becoming accredited. So when members become accredited, we don't just send them on their merry way, give them a logo, give them a certificate and tell them to just crack on with it. We keep in touch with our members. We share resources, guides. Our members have access to myself, to Chris, if they need help with their content, their copy, how to leverage the accreditation as a marketing tool, because that's the only way it works. And in essence, what that logo and what that certificate does is it guarantees peace of mind. And one other thing I just want to quickly point out, I think a lot of people, when they see iPrac verification, their first impression is that, okay, this now guarantees that this short-term rental is legitimate, which in fact is the case. But what it also guarantees is that it is of equality, that is being showcased on the website. So it's honest, it's authentic. And what a lot of people don't realize is that when you book with an iPrac approved host, you can also expect more than adequate standards of hospitality, because this is also something else we vet. So when a guest books an iPrac approved property, they register it onto our website. If something goes wrong and the hospitality isn't great during their stay, they can get in touch with us and we will compensate as necessary. So we are literally hitting all of the areas of doubt and uncertainty. So anyone who is looking to be approved, it's a very simple process on our website. I know we'll probably share the link in the show notes, but please do reach out to myself, Neely Khan or Chris Moore on LinkedIn. We're super active on LinkedIn. We're always willing to answer questions, speak to our members. We have a very engaged community, and we will always answer any other questions.
Thank you so much. I'm going to hand this over to Mike to wrap up in a second, but thank you, Harshad. Thank you, Dave, for joining us, and Neely, of course. It's been such a great honor to have you all with us.
Yeah, it's been a really great session, everybody, and thank you so much. We've had some great feedback from the people attending, some great takeaways. I love this one from Gabby. Review existing verifications first, like local tourist associations, and then build off those. I mean, I think that's something that a lot of people forget, is networking with your local community organizations, because they will help support your business too. It's in their vested interest. It gives them a resource that they can go to for additional accommodation. And Jane said, trust needs to be earned. Guests don't know you from the big OTAs. And that is the whole point of this, is that really it's about standing out from the crowd and demonstrating that you're not just a fly-by-night or get-rich-quick accommodation provider. Like, you really do care, and this is a legitimate business that guests are booking. And that's where iPrac really comes in. So I did share the link to iPrac in the notes there, so just click on that real quick before we closed down. Just a reminder that next week is Insurance Week, not the most glamorous of topics, but again, an essential topic that you need to understand. And there are so many areas that I've learned over these last few weeks as we've been putting this together of areas of the business I didn't realize that many short-term rental operators are not covered for. So next week, Insurance Week is a really important one to stay connected on. If you're registered for this session, you'll be updated on Monday with a newsletter as to the content, and also to join us next Thursday. So Thursday, the 15th of February at 11 a.m. Eastern is our STIR Crazy Month Insurance Week panel, which will be a great one to great one to attend and not to miss, to get some good insights into insurance and how it really affects you. So thank you. Yes, just quick wrap up. Just thank you to you all. I appreciate your time. We're all very busy. And again, the attendees for being here and sharing in this great conversation. So thanks, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you on the socials as we share more and more about STIR Crazy Month.